The morning sun rose over the pasture, casting long golden beams across the rolling hills. I stepped out onto the porch with coffee in hand, the sound of my bulls snorting in the distance. To me, it was just another day on the ranch, but I had no idea trouble was already brewing on the other side of the fence. It started small, the kind of thing you almost laugh off. Karen, the self-appointed queen of the HOA, had decided that my cows grazing near her subdivision were somehow ruining the neighborhood's aesthetic. At first, it was a snide comment shouted across the fence. Then it was angry emails, written like courtroom declarations, demanding that I move the herd farther south, as if the bulls would politely stay where she wanted. But it didn't stop there. One Saturday morning, I found the HOA hosting a campout right on my fence line. RVs were parked shoulder to shoulder, bonfires blazing, kids running wild. And there was Karen, clipboard in hand, acting like the land was hers. They'd propped up lawn chairs, speakers blasting music, and even hammered makeshift signs into the dirt claiming it was community green space. My jaw clenched. That wasn't community land. That was deeded pasture. My family's. My bulls. I walked up to the north gate, calm but firm, and told Karen she needed to move her circus. She just smirked, lips red as fresh paint, and said, "This isn't your land anymore. It belongs to the community." Behind her, the crowd cheered like she'd just delivered some historic speech. I shook my head, warned her once more, and turned back toward my barn. But I could feel it, the storm was building. The next week was worse. Fence posts were snapped like twigs, barbed wire trampled down where RVs had cut across. My trail cams caught campers slipping through at night, hauling in coolers, building fires. My bulls grew restless, snorting at the strangers invading their ground. Still, I held back. A rancher doesn't rush. He waits, observes, stacks his evidence. Then one evening, as the sun dipped low, I caught sight of it, Karen herself, clipboard clutched tight, parading through my pasture like she was inspecting her new empire. A bull snorted loud enough to make her stumble, but she laughed it off, waving her hand as if the animal was no more than a barking dog. My patience frayed. It wasn't just arrogance anymore. It was trespass. By then, neighbors had taken sides. Some rallied behind Karen, eager for more community space. Others whispered that she was pushing too far, that I had every right to protect my land. But Karen thrived on noise. At HOA meetings, she painted me as reckless, claiming my livestock were feral threats, accusing me of endangering children, even blaming me for a broken swing set miles from my fence. I kept quiet. Every insult, every accusation, went into a binder thicker than a family Bible. Photos of the RVs, trail cam footage of fences being torn. Sheriff's reports of trespassing calls. Insurance notices warning of fire hazards from their campouts. Karen thought silence meant weakness. She had no idea silence was just my rope, tightening inch by inch. One night, as my bulls grazed under the stars, I leaned against the repaired section of fence and thought of my dad. He'd told me once, "Boundaries matter, son. You protect them with your back straight and your paperwork tighter than barbed wire." I didn't realize how true those words would be. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. I woke to headlights flooding my yard. Karen had called county officers, claiming my bulls had escaped and were roaming her subdivision. I walked out, boots crunching gravel, to find my herd calmly chewing cud right where they belonged, behind the fence. Karen stood there, lipstick like war paint, gesturing wildly at the officers. But the deputies weren't fools. They saw the intact fence, the quiet bulls, and the posted signs. They left with little more than a warning to keep the peace. Karen was furious. To her, it wasn't just about cows. It was about control. And if she couldn't win on the ground, she'd drag me into her battlefield, court. I'll never forget the way she smirked at the notice she had delivered. To her, it was checkmate. To me, it was an invitation. The binder was ready. The receipts stacked higher than her clipboard. And while she thought the courtroom would be her salvation, I knew it would be my battleground. 2 weeks later, I pushed open the heavy courtroom doors with Dale at my side. He wasn't just a lawyer, he was an old friend, the kind of man who knew how to cut through noise with steady precision. In his hands was my binder, thick with photos, videos, reports, and receipts. Across the aisle, Karen sat flanked by 3 attorneys in sharp suits, their briefcases snapping open like weapons. She wore a bright red blazer, lipstick blazing like war paint, clipboard clutched tight. She leaned back in her chair, smirking, like victory was already hers. The HOA's case went first. They painted me as a reckless cowboy, a danger to families, a stubborn neighbor clinging to outdated land. They played shaky phone clips of bulls grazing peacefully, narrating them as if they were scenes from a horror film. They called me negligent, selfish, even criminal. Each lawyer took a turn, their voices loud, their binders full of bluster. Karen soaked in the performance, smiling like she'd already won. Then Dale stood. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. With calm precision, he laid out the evidence. Survey maps showing the so-called community green space was deeded pasture, legally mine. Trail cam footage of campers cutting fences, dragging coolers, and tearing down signs. Sheriff's reports confirming my livestock movement was scheduled and lawful. County citations not against me, but against the HOA, fire hazards, illegal dumping, unpermitted gatherings. Insurance notices suspending coverage because of their campouts. Finally, Dale handed the judge one last set of documents, tax lien receipts. Months earlier, while Karen was busy waging war, I'd been quietly buying up delinquent liens tied to several of the HOA's common areas. If they defaulted, I'd have first claim. The judge flipped through the papers, eyebrows raised. Karen's smirk faltered. When Dale finished, the courtroom was silent except for the soft shuffle of pages. The judge leaned forward, adjusting his glasses. So, not only did the HOA trespass, he said slowly, but their president misrepresented ownership of land they don't control. His gavel cracked down once. Karen jumped. The ruling was swift and sharp. The court dismissed all claims against me, upheld my rights, and ordered the HOA to pay damages for trespass, nuisance, property destruction, and legal fees. On top of that, they were fined for county violations and forced to fund repairs to my fence line. But the hammer didn't stop there. With those liens in hand, I now had leverage over portions of their so-called green belt. Karen had tried to steal my land, and in the end, I'd gained a grip over hers. Karen's face drained as the verdict echoed. Her clipboard slipped to the floor, forgotten. The neighbors behind her, once cheering her crusade, now whispered about recalls and resignations. I stood straighter, not because I'd crushed her, but because I'd done it the right way. With patience, paperwork, and a little help from 24 bulls. When reporters caught me outside the courthouse, shoving microphones toward my mouth, I just smiled. Boundaries matter, I said. Respect them, or you'll get moved. That was all. The fallout came fast. HOA dues skyrocketed to cover damages and legal costs. Families who'd once applauded Karen now cursed her name, waving overdue bills at board meetings. A tired mother shouted that Karen's war had cost her family 3 months' mortgage. A veteran slammed his fist on the table, saying, "You turned this HOA into a circus." The board voted her out on the spot. Karen left red-faced and trembling, muttering about appeals, but everyone knew it was over. Her replacement, an older gentleman named Harris, came to see me in person. He stood at my gate, hat in hand. "We're done fighting," he said. "Let's fix this fence and move on." I shook his hand. That was all I ever wanted. The weeks that followed felt almost surreal. Crews hauled out trash bags by the truckload. Volunteers spread fresh seed across the rutted pasture. Kids in sneakers hammered fence staples alongside my wranglers, laughing as they learned to stretch wire tight. For the first time in years, the fence line wasn't a battleground. It was a shared project, a boundary respected. One evening, the sun dipped orange across the hills as I walked the repaired north gate. My hand brushed the fresh cedar post, smooth and solid. The bulls grazed quietly in the south pasture, their shadows stretching long across the grass. No bonfires. No blaring music. No RVs. Just peace. Karen vanished soon after, selling her house at a loss and moving 2 towns over. Maybe she found another HOA to terrorize, maybe not. Either way, she wasn't my problem anymore. What mattered was the lesson she left behind, a reminder that patience and preparation outlast bluster and noise. Thanks to those liens, every HOA board meeting now opened with an acknowledgement in writing. The rancher next door wasn't to be crossed lightly. Not because I sought revenge. I didn't need their land. But the leverage meant they'd never try that stunt again. As the crickets sang that night and the bulls shifted softly in the grass, I leaned against the fence and whispered a quiet thank you to my dad. For the binder he'd left me. For the lessons about patience, paperwork, and the quiet power of boundaries. Because out here, fences aren't just wood and wire. They're respect. They're survival. And that's the truth I carry forward. Boundaries matter, not just in land but in life. People will push. They'll prod. They'll dress selfishness up as community. But standing firm isn't selfish. It's steady. You don't have to scream. You don't have to swing fists. You gather your facts, you wait, and you act when the moment is right. Like those bulls, slow, steady, deliberate. You move with purpose, not panic. And when the dust settles, you'll see who respected the line and who crumbled under their own noise. So if you've got your own Karen breathing down your neck, remember, paper weighs more than shouting. Receipts cut sharper than insults. And patience, that's the strongest weapon of all.